And now we're in the after show, Mark. Here we are.
Right.
Right. So,
Sorry, did I ramble?
how does one become a futurist?
How does one become a futurist? Well, I never wanted to be a futurist. I don't call myself a futurist, really. Other people started calling me a futurist. And I'll tell you how to become a futurist is you write a couple of books with the word future somewhere on the cover. And then people start calling you a futurist. Now,
is there a lot of pressure?
Future, I call myself a reluctant futurist. My job is to think about the future. But one reason I'm not really comfortable with the term is because futurism is associated with prediction. And human beings are very bad at predictions. We predict them within our own senses, our own, the things we see around us. We can't imagine what we can't imagine. And also, the sort of third and fourth order effects of a new technology or idea are just too hard to predict. Internet arrives, you don't have to be a genius to predict email, right? But nobody predicts social media. Nobody predicts social media spreading fake news and how that might affect a democratic process. No, that stuff is too hard. So my job is really, like I say, I'm going to make you future literate, and understand the questions the future is asking you, whether that's about climate change or technological disruption, equality, or whatever it is. I'm going to get you literate about those questions, and then I'm going to help you architect your business and your career to answer those questions in the cause of making the world more sustainable, equitable, humane, or just. So that's kind of what I do. And people call me a futurist, but I can't predict the future because I don't know what all you guys are going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, can we all work together to A, answer the right questions, and B, do something good in the cause of answering those questions. When you look at the history of prediction, it's nightmarish. Man will not fly for 50 years. That was Wilbur Wright. He was building an airplane when he made that prediction. The horse is here to stay. The automobile is a fad. 1927. This was advice to Henry Ford's lawyer. One of my favorites from about 1830 is talking about prejudice, not just technological prejudice, but cultural prejudice. This incredibly sexist kind of prediction from 1830 as to why steam engines ain't going to take off big style. Do you know why? Because the prediction was that women's bodies are not designed to go at 50 miles an hour because their uteruses will fly out of their bodies when accelerated to that speed.
What?
Yeah. 1977, Ken Olsen, the president of the Digital Equipment Corporation, says there's no reason anybody would want a computer in their home.
Yeah.
It's like one of the biggest computer companies in the world. So, the mobile phone predictions were all wrong. Everybody's wrong about everything. So I try not to predict. What I do is say, here's a question you're being asked. What are you going to do to answer that question in a way that makes the world better?
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
You're a futurist.
And so your Twitter handle is Optimist on Tour. Does that suggest that you actually have an optimist perspective on the future?
No.
Or is it ironic?
Well, what I am is I call myself a possibilist. So if you look at visions of the future and ask most people about the future, then they're pretty down on it. And for very human beings are naturally cautious. All of our fiction is dystopian because that's much more entertaining. I mean, nobody wants to watch Terminator Gardening Day, right? That's not an interesting movie. The future has to be full of conflict and whatever.
Yeah.
You ask most people how they feel about the future. They say, my future's great. My family's going to be great. I'm going to be fantastic. You ask them about the collective future. How do you feel about humanity? They're like, oh, terrible. Everything's going to hell. So we have this dominant kind of narrative that the future's going to be bad.
Yeah.
There is another narrative which is equally possible, which is the future can be amazing. And in many ways, the world is getting better, but we have these challenges. So, but there are ways to solve all of the problems we have. I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in my work a lot. The bad is everything's broken, whether that's the healthcare system, the education system, how we think about employment, where we govern our countries, whatever, climate change. Everything's broken. The good news is it's all fixable. And I know that because of the work I do and the books I write and the people I hang out with. I help get investment for people fixing these problems or trying to. I know it's fixable. And the ugly news is it's going to get very messy as we go through this transition. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, if we answer these questions badly, we'll end up where we're going. Great Chinese proverb, if we don't stop where we're headed, we're going to end up where we're going. So if we carry the way we are, the future's terrible. But my job is to try and make it better. I hope make that transition a bit less messy. But when I wrote my first book, it was originally called A World Tour of the Future. And my agent read it and he said, wow, reading this book has made me much more optimistic. So I think you should call it An Optimist Tour of the Future. And I said, well, I'm not sure about that. He said, look, I'm your agent and I guarantee you sell more copies with the word optimist on the cover. And I was like, I like the idea of selling more copies, so I'll go with you. And of course,
Indeed.
from that on, I got, you know, I mean, and rightly so, people say, well, you're the optimist guy. Well, I'm not. I'm the possibilist guy that says it could be okay.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now tell me, where in England am I hearing your accent from? Northeast? Not Northeast.
No, I'm from the Midlands. I'm from that place where we don't have an accent. We're in between.
Ah ha ha. We all say that. That's what we say in the Midwest as well. Yes.
It's the Midwest. It's the Midwest of the UK. It's, you know, I come from a county called Staffordshire, and it's one of those places you drive through to get somewhere more interesting.
Indeed, I have. My husband lived in Newcastle for a very long time, and my stepchildren live near there. So I'm always, it's a little hobby. I'm always like, okay, which British accent is that? And, you know, most Americans don't know there are lots of British accents. So.
And I tend to find that when I'm, you know, doing American TV or whatever, that they just love you to be even more British. So if you just up your Britishness even a bit more and start talking a bit like this, then they get this fantastic, Mark. Can you do a bit more of that? And you know, but I don't know. I did try that a few times and found out it was great for picking up gay men.
Well, you know, the reality is it's instant credibility. It really is. In America, if you walk in with a British accent, boom, credible.
Well, and also when you cast your villains in all your movies, they're usually British.
Yes. Well, yeah,
we could be credibly evil.
Well, historically, you know, that makes sense that we would do that.
To our arrogant imperialism. So yeah.
Wow. Should we end things on that note? That's terrible.
But you know, the world is changing. The world is changing slowly, and it's getting better. I know I've been looking at technologies this last week that are going to just change everything, and for the good. And the investment world is now moving in a much more positive direction. Not enough of them, but you know, a good 5-10% are now thinking, right, we're launching funds which are based around sustainable development goals. We're talking about social purpose. You know, when the UN was formed, the 58 biggest economies are still the 58 biggest economies. But you only take it up to 100. Actually, you need to involve 42 biggest companies in the world, investment houses, and they're beginning to realise that they've got to step up to this government's plate, and they are doing, and it's slow and it's painful and there's lots of rocky roads. But I think we'll get there.
I hope so.
We get there. I mean, as I was saying this morning to a friend of mine, I was saying, like, you know, I'm trying to make the world a better place. We may not make it, but even if I lose, I'm going to have a better time going towards the end of the world than all those cynics.
Yes, yes. I like that. I do.
Yeah.
We'll do our best.
Saving the world's where all the best parties are, right?
Yes,
so, you know,
that's what they say.
Yeah, if you want to get on the right side of history, if you want to do something about moving the world forward, guess what? You're going to hang out with more interesting people with more passion. You're going to go to better parties, have better cocktails, have more sex, more often with more interesting people. So if that doesn't get you on the side of making the world a better place, I don't know what will.
Absolutely. Mark, this has been great fun. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We will send you links as soon as it goes live. I don't think it'll be too long. So
great. I'll tweet it out to my millions of fans.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Take care.
All right, cheers.
Bye.